Shalom, shalom, mashpaka. Welcome back to the Straight Gate. What I have queued up in front of you is a historical bit of information that can tie into our scriptures found in Deuteronomy chapter 28, particularly the curses. But we'll go into this history here entitled 1619, Virginia's First African. And hopefully I can make several portions of this lesson broken up into different videos, so that way it's not one long, continuous 3-4 hour lesson. And we'll bring out some images, some imagery to tie into our scriptures, along with some precepts. And I hope you enjoy. We'll start from the top here. 1619, Virginia's First African. And this was prepared by Beth Austin, a historian for the Hampton History Museum. And we'll go into the overview of what this thesis is. From the top it reads, in late August 1619, 20 to 30 enslaved Africans landed at Point Comfort, today's Fort Monroe, in Hampton, Virginia, aboard the English privateer ship White Lion. In Virginia, these Africans were traded in exchange for supplies. Several days later, additional enslaved Africans arrived in Virginia aboard a second ship, Treasurer. The Africans brought on both ships were Kimbundu-speaking people from West Central Africa and had been captured by English privateers from the Spanish slave ship San Juan Bautista. They are the first recorded Africans to arrive in England's mainland American colonies. See if I can cue up some pictures of the White Lion. So this is a picture of the slaves embarking in Jamestown from the either the Treasurer or the White Lion in 1619. Some of the first slaves that were brought here from the west coast of Africa. I'll cue up another picture here for you guys. This picture here seems to be a decommissioned San Juan Bautista slave ship, the one that was apparently attacked, the Portuguese vessel that was attacked by the Treasurer and the White Lion, and were stolen from this ship here. We'll jump back into our reading. Right, boom. Okay, we're doing good here. So, landing of the first Africans in Virginia. In late August 1619, the English privateer ship White Lion arrived at Point Comfort. There was a video that was a movie that was released on Netflix not too long ago. It was called Leave the World Behind. A portion of that movie, or a clip, shows a cargo vessel beaching itself onto the shores of the United States. And on the side of the vessel, you see White Lion. That could tie into biblical prophecy, maybe the 400-year prophecy, the curse. But we'll continue reading on. On board were 20 and odd captives taken from the kingdom of Ndongo in West Central Africa. They were sold to Sir Yeardley, Virginia's governor, and Abraham Pearsley, the Cape merchant, the colony's supply officer and trade agent, in return for food and supplies. Surviving documents do not describe the first Africans coming ashore, but they probably were taken off the White Lion at Point Comfort, either temporarily before the White Lion sailed to Jamestown, or to be transferred to smaller crafts to be resold elsewhere. Okay, we get a clearer picture of what's going on here. 3 or 4 days later, the White Lion's consort ship, treasurer, arrived with additional enslaved Africans at nearby Kickinton, also in present-day Hampton. The treasurer did not stay long at Kickinton, departing quickly to avoid an ensuing scandal and potential seizure. It is unclear how many of the Africans on board the treasurer were traded and remained in Virginia. Treasurer sailed to Bermuda, where a friendly governor allowed her commander, Captain Daniel Elfrith, to land and trade. When she arrived in Bermuda, 27 to 29 enslaved Africans were aboard. The captives aboard White Lion and Treasure had been stolen from the Spanish slave ship San Juan Bautista, or Sao João Batista in Portuguese records. The two English privateers had attacked the Spanish slave ship a few weeks before arriving in Virginia. A March 1620 census of inhabitants of Virginia lists 32 Africans, 15 male and 17 female, as others not Christians in the service of the English. All probably came from the White Lion and Treasure groups taken from the San Juan Bautista. None are identified by name. That happens to be my last name. Right? And you can find this article on the website hamptonhistorymuseum.org 1619. They have a vast amount of information that we can dive into if you do not care to continue watching my video. Reading on. The Treasure Scandal, Piracy and the First Africans. The fate of the Africans taken from San Juan Bautista was bound up in a web of piracy, illicit trade, and scandal for the Virginia Company. Privateering piracy against Spanish ships sailing from the Americas was commonplace for privately owned English vessels during Elizabeth I's reign, but King James I, 1604 Treaty of London made peace with Spain and outlawed piracy. After 1604, English ships wishing to continue privateering had to secure commissions or authorizations, called letters of marque, from other European heads of state. White Lion's letter of marque was issued from Flushing, Zeeland, now Vlissingen, Holland, and Treasurer's letter of marque came from the Duke of Savoy, now part of northeastern Italy, and was probably issued by the Duke's ambassador in London, who was known to issue marques to ship captains. However, by the time of the attack on the San Juan Bautista, the Duke of Savoy had made peace with Spain, rendering the treasurer's letter of marque invalid. White Lion sailed from Flushing, or Dutch port well known as a base for English privateers, and both crews probably included Dutch sailors. Several records refer to White Lion as Dutch, from Flushing or out of Flushing. These records do not imply the ship was Dutch, but rather it was an English ship based from Flushing, a commonly understood practice. They all may have wished to emphasize the White Lion's Dutch letter of marque to distance themselves from the practice of privateering. So yeah, there was definitely some scandals going on, maybe to hide what they were smuggling on those ships. Moving on. Treasure had a long history of piracy in the West Indies, as well as dishonest dealings with other ships. And her connection to disgraced Virginia's governor, Sir Amiel Argall, ballooned into a major scandal that eventually contributed to the dissolution of the Virginia Company. Efforts to minimize or cover up her piratical activity and the involvement of her owners and investors had obscured the historical record. Treasure last left England in April 1618, and it is unclear whether her captain, Daniel Elfrith, knew his letter of marque was invalid when the two ships attacked the San Juan Bautista. If Elfrith knew, he likely assumed he would meet a ready welcome from friends in Virginia. Treasure was formerly captained by acting Virginia Governor Samuel Argall. Argall, in league with part owner Sir Robert Rich, Earl of Warwick, regularly supplied the ship of Jamestown, which acted as a base for treasure to privateer in the West Indies. Dispositions indicate the treasurer was reported to authorities as fitted out as a fishing vessel, but in reality was armed as a warship. Another precept has hit me. Between 1618 and 1620, a rival faction within the Virginia Company, led by Sir Edwin Sandys and Sir Thomas, Earl of Southampton, worked to expose Argall and Warwick's illegal activities and oust them from power. In 1618, the Virginia Company dispatched Sir George Yeardley to replace Argall as governor of Virginia, investigate complaints of corruption and piracy, and send home and said Captain Argall in quality of a malefactor, and to sequester all his goods there for restitution to the company. Argall escaped on a small ship sent speedily from England before Yeardley's arrival in Virginia in April 1619. By June 1619, the Virginia Company wrote instructions to Yeardley to give in diligent order that the ship treasure be seized immediately upon her return, and examination taken of her course and proceedings. It is unclear whether this letter reached Yeardley in Virginia before the treasurer's return in late August or early September, but even if not, Yeardley instructed John Rolfe and two other officials to bring the ship to Jamestown after learning of its return. When treasurer arrived at Kickinton, Eldridge sent word to Jamestown, expecting the message to be received by Argall, but left Virginia hastily after learning of Argall's flight and the men on their way to bring the ship to Jamestown. The inhabitants of Kickinton refused to resupply treasure. However, at least one sailor from the treasure remained in Virginia after the ship departed, and an unknown number of enslaved Africans, including a woman named Angelo, were sold privately to individuals, possibly those more friendly to Argall's faction. After sailing from Kickinton, treasure received a better welcome in Bermuda, where Governor Nathaniel Butler was friendly to privateers and was also a former captive and associate to Warwick. If treasure had been welcomed in Virginia and allowed to trade openly, it is likely all the Africans on board would have been sold and remained in Virginia alongside the Africans from the White Lion. Eyewitness testimony about treasurer's activities was recorded from the sailors and officials in England, Bermuda, and Virginia. These depositions contain conflicting accounts of the ship's movement and activities. They were covering up their go-tos and comings. Some describe the ship as unseaworthy and imply she was destroyed or salvaged in Bermuda. Colonial Bermuda records indicate most of all the remaining enslaved Africans from the treasure were temporarily seized by the colony because of privateering scandal. Some of the enslaved Africans from the treasure labored for the colony and on the property of the Earl of Warwick under the auspices of Governors Miles Kendall and Nathaniel Butler. Miles Kendall wrote to Nathaniel Rich, "If it were not for the accidental Negroes, those from the treasure and another privateer, I were not able to raise 1 pound of tobacco this year for the defrayment of any public work. These slaves are the most proper and cheap instruments for this plantation that can be." Between 1618 and 1620, Warwick set about replacing white tenant farmers on his land in Bermuda with enslaved Africans, so he would not have to pay them their share of tobacco. However, word of the treasure scandal reached Bermuda, and Butler, aligned with Warwick's faction, was ousted from power. I pray that this is edifying, and I'm going to have to stop it here so that way we can ingest this information and the intro to what I will be bringing out in the future, in future videos, and aligning it a little more with our scriptures and prophecy and what is to come. So I pray this was beneficial to whoever may be searching for this information and digging up some history and whereabouts of where our ancestors came from and how we were scattered to the four winds. And so I'll just end it here. And thank you all for watching. Until the next time, shalom.